I told you that it was going to be special this week on Grown Man Radio, and I mentioned that I would be talking to someone, a gentleman whom you need to know, and this is exclusive, all right? The only show that's bringing you this gentleman live and direct is the Tonex Show. So I built it up enough. Let me formally introduce to you Dr. Wilcox, the superintendent of Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. Sir, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here on Grown Man Radio.
Tonex, thank you very much for having me on Grown Man Radio. I'm also all socked up now because of you, so thank you very much for that.
What he's talking about. Now listen, he has an affection for socks like I do. We love the sock game. And of course, when he came today for the interview, I look up under the pants legs. That's customary. And then he had the sock game on, but he said he didn't have the popping sock game on today. He just had the basic sock game on.
Conservative sock today.
So we can't take any days off.
I'm with you now.
From the sock game. So I had to hook him up with a pair of exclusives from the Sock King. Now you're ready.
Now I'm ready. I'm rolling in the new Nantuckets.
Okay,
I'm good, man.
The Martha's Vineyard. That's what
man.
we call them. So the same way I say we can't take any days off on the sock game, you can't take any days off on this education.
No, we have too much work to do. We've got so many young people that are depending on us. And quite honestly, right now, if you don't have an education in the 21st century, the world's a very unforgiving place. So we've got to do more.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said, number one, the world is a very unforgiving place. And number two, we've got to do more. Not you got to do more, not I've got to do more. It's we've got to do more. Now, the philosophy is it takes a nation it takes a village to raise a kid. And we are all a part of this village, from the teachers to the administrators to the parents to the children. And a lot of times when things go to the left, it's very easy to point the finger at who's in charge, quote unquote.
It is. I was reminded of about 15 years ago, I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana as the superintendent. And I was a young superintendent then, and I was pointing my finger to a group of folks and saying, if you don't do this, if you don't do that. And an older African-American woman looked me in the eye and said, Superintendent, I want to remind you of something. When you point a finger at somebody, there's three pointing back at you.
Right.
And so that's always trying to shape my philosophy that, I've got to take care of my business, but I can't do this alone. I need parents. I need great teachers. I need others like yourself to really help me with that work.
What is the message?
Well, I think the message for us is that as a community, we've got to come together. We've got to say that the education of our kids is our most important job. Some parents are going to help us by not teaching ABCs or 1, 2, 3s, but teaching their child to be respectful when they come into school so that they can take advantage of what the teachers are bringing. Some parents are going to help us because they have resources they can bring to the school. Some parents are going to help us simply by their daily example of hard work and devotion. Some parents are just going to help us because they're kind and they issue kind words so kids come to school not thinking that their only outlet is violence. I think the answer is all those things and more.
I think as parents we have to understand that it's not 100% solely responsible. The responsibility doesn't solely fall upon the teacher. We have to all help when it comes to educating our kids. A lot of parents haven't seen the schools, haven't seen the teachers, don't know the teachers as well as they should until their kid gets into trouble.
Yeah.
Or until it's something negative. And a lot of times I say that's too late. I say we need to be a part of the kids' curriculum. We need to be a part of the programs. We need to have a presence at those schools, especially black parents, because traditionally you don't see us there. Would you agree?
Well, I think more often than not I do see that today. And I think that's a part of some larger systemic issues that we have in society. We over-incarcerate a number of our black men. We make employment that is sustainable for a family too hard to achieve. And so I think we really have to take a look at ourselves as a society, not just at one race of folks. I think some people have to check their privilege to let other people actually enjoy some of the fruits of this country. So I think there's a lot of things at play in all of this.
That goes, when you say have to check their privilege, points me in the direction of a balance when it comes to the schools, and I'm speaking demographics, I'm speaking income, I'm speaking ethnicities. A lot of times it's hard to find a balance between the quote-unquote inner-city schools, the high-populous children of color, compared to the high-populous Caucasian kids in the Caucasian demographics. You can see the schools look better. So if the schools look better, then we feel that the books are better, the teaching methods are better, the teachers must be better. So it has to be some kind of balance between all of the schools, so all of the kids can get the same kind of level education or level playing field. How do you see that?
Well, I think all that is true, but it's oftentimes more complicated than that. When you think about where our older schools are, they're concentrated around the inner city. At one time they were a new school when the population there was different. But as communities gentrify and move out,
Right.
or as people relocate into suburban areas and have new schools built, it's new for a reason, because it's newer. It's not because, I set out or someone set out to create an enclave, if you will. But I think what it says to me as a superintendent, that if I'm more than just words about equity, I have to acknowledge that, and then I have to make sure that there are new books, there are technology in those older facilities, that some of my best teachers are there. And what's interesting to me is when I look at the data right now, some of the best teaching is actually going on in some of our urban schools. Within Project Lift in West Charlotte, they're moving kids way more than a year's growth in a year's time, when some of our suburban schools are just getting a year's growth in time. So, I think we've got to be really careful when we look at this before we start to say, well, we don't have this, we don't have that. Because the reality is we're starting to make some very, very positive changes for kids. We're not there yet by any means. I don't want to declare any kind of victory in all this. But I think it's a complicated set of issues. I think it's time for adults, for real adults, to sit down and say, you know what, let's have a conversation about this. Let's talk about what really is at play here.
Right. What is one of the biggest challenges of your job?
I think in many ways it's resource allocation. It is saying to some parents that we're going to spend more on kids who need us more than kids who don't. It's about providing connections to our curriculum to kids so that they're inspired. We talk a lot about the achievement gap within the system, and we do have achievement gaps. But I think what we really have is an inspiration gap. Many of my young black and brown kids simply don't know that there's something better than what's in their neighborhood. And because they don't know that there's something better, they don't aspire to something more. And that's all of our fault, that we don't show kids what great jobs look like. We don't show kids that there's dignity and value in all work. I think it's just a community that's time to come together. We can't have these conversations in isolation.
When you say community and come together, what's one small thing that the communities can do to come together?
It's interesting, Tony, that you'd ask me that, because I've been giving that a lot of thought lately. We released a report called Breaking the Link, and we talked about levers of change. And for the first time ever, we kind of changed our definition of equity. It's not about, do you have as many microscopes as the school down the street, do you have as many textbooks. It's about outcomes for kids. And so I started thinking, well, where do those outcomes come from? They come from teachers and schoolhouses. And so maybe for us, we have to acknowledge that if we as a society have one great social institution, it is our public schools. And that might be the rally point. That might be where parents come together. Even parents who don't feel they were well served in the past, because all too often that is the case. When I go out and say, well, why aren't you engaged in your child's education? They say, because school was horrible for me. Those people treated me badly. They mistreated me. They miseducated my brother or their sister. They disrespected my parents. We've got to get past that, and I know that's hard. But I think if we rally around the schoolhouse and around our children today, then we can start to change this equation. I'm going to walk you back to Baton Rouge when I was there. We ended the nation's longest continually litigated desegregation case. But something that stuck out to me was one of the black citizens who brought that case. They were the original, I can't even think of the legal term, but they were one of the original people in the case. Well, they said, Dr. Wilcox, we didn't bring this case because we wanted to sit next to white kids. We brought this case because we wanted great educational outcomes for our kids. And the only way we were going to get those is by sitting next to white kids, but times have changed. And so I think times have in fact changed. I think that we could go into West Charlotte. I think that we could go into West Meck. I think we could go into Ranston. I think we could go into a number of our schools and say, you know what, forget who's not here. Let's talk about what we have here. Let's make this a great school. I think that's the way we do this.
I appreciate your honesty, and I think one of the things that I'm hearing when you keep talking about community, and I think about especially with black kids in the city, they really don't have a lot to cling or hang on to or to hope for. And I heard you say if we could help the kids understand that there's more than just what's in their community. And the word underlying tone of that is hope. That's the foundational word right there. We are supposed to be giving these kids hope through education, but these extracurricular activities, as something as small as a choral program, will give kids something to look forward to besides athletics. Everybody's not going to play basketball or football. Something as small as chorus, where they could go and they could sing. I was in chorus, all right, and it did a lot for me. It was a big part for me, and it gave me something to do that made me feel proud to be a part of. And I noticed that a lot of the programs are getting eased out of the school systems here in the CMS. And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel, first of all, about those programs in particular, like chorus, even shop, or even the hands-on programs, like where you could get a trade, like when I was in school, probably when you were in school, and you could go to auto. Listen, they joked me because I was in the class. What was the class where you used to learn how to bake the cakes?
Home
and you used to sew home ec.
Yeah.
All right, they killed me because I was in home ec, right? But I could sew, I could bake cakes. Okay, I could do a lot of things. But what I'm saying is, even something as small as that, gives you a small sense of hope. And when you hear about they may be taking them out, do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So just recently at one of our high schools, we had a principal who was faced with, what do I offer, another math class or chorus? And unfortunately, we put him in that position. And he said, well, I'm not going to have chorus next year. And about 40 of his kids showed up at our board meeting last month to say, wait a minute, how can you do that? If you're the superintendent who values the arts, which I do, the greatest inequality is treat everybody equally. So you can't just say because we have this number of kids, we get this many teachers, we need more. And so we did reach back out to them and say, we're going to keep that chorus there. We're going to keep it strong, and we're going to keep it vibrant. I think that goes a long ways to beginning to send a message to this community that I do believe in equity. I do believe in the power of the arts. It's interesting that you mentioned your experience with home economics. I had a similar experience, but mine was with radio production and a teacher named Merle Pick. I actually did the noontime lunch program at my high school, where I sat at a small board like this and a microphone and some headphones, and I thought I was really cool. But I was playing music like Led Zeppelin and Steppenwolf. That's how old I am.
Yeah, you just told your age.
Yeah, I did. But that's all we had. I was a kid in Iowa, so we didn't have a rich, vibrant cultural awareness. We just played what we knew. And but having that experience gave me kind of a desire to reach out to more people. It changed who I am, and it changed what I do with my life, and it also changed my appreciation for the arts. That experience led me to being the roadie for a rock and roll band. I tuned guitars, put them on stage, I toted amps, I set up the PA system, and for 5 years, that's how I paid for college.
You're a regular Jimmy Iovine, aren't you?
Oh man, come on. But that's how I paid for college. And so, the arts have always been important to me because of that, because the guys in the band were guys that were deeply in the arts. Hill Green went on to Juilliard and not only studied, he taught there ultimately. Hill is a stand-up bass player in New York City today. He does all kinds of gigs all around the country and, in fact, around the world. So, I believe in the arts. I believe in career technology education. My dad ran a gas station for all his life until he lost it to the oil embargo when DX, which is the Midwestern Gas Company, started to close stations. But that's where I also learned the dignity and value of all work. I learned how to work hard, and I learned the value of that.
Mm-hmm. The elephant in the room is the teachers saying that they want more pay. Now, I've been saying this for years. I even do this in my comedy, and I have a comedian friend of mine named Hank Denson. His whole campaign is to get teachers paid more money. And I always say teachers are one of the most underpaid professions because of what they have to deal with. I'll put them on the same scale as the police officer because you're dealing with so many energies, all those different kids, those different attitudes. Then you factor in the parents. It's difficult. And we all know the mindset in a capitalistic society. Better teachers, better pay. Basic teachers, basic pay. So now, the teachers are going up to Raleigh to rally about this more money situation. I just want to know, how do you feel, number one, about teachers and how they're paid, how they're looked at? And number two, do you support them? Or what's your stand on it?
Well, first, I've been pretty clear that I support our teachers. I believe that they are the best advocates for themselves. They're going to make the case when they get the opportunity to talk to the legislature about how valuable they are. I grew up in a family of educators. I have uncles that were teachers and principals. I myself have been a classroom teacher for 16 years. I absolutely understand that our teachers are underpaid given the service that they provide to our community. So, I cheer them on for going to Raleigh to advocate for themselves. In my budget that I've now presented to the County Commission, we're asking for more funding for our teachers because we believe even if they're not successful in Raleigh, we've got to do something here locally. So absolutely, I'm 100% behind our teachers in this work. I won't be going with them to stand on the steps of the Capitol, but I'll continue my advocacy through the channels that I have because I think it's the right time. I think we're at a moment in time where we have to decide as a country, do we value our teachers and what they can provide for us to help us preserve this great republic, or do we not? I think the one thing that we all know, having kind of watched what's going on politically across this country, having watched some of the other crazy things that are happening from school shootings to violence in our communities to the unjust treatment of young black kids by police officers in some cases, by other authority figures, when we take a look at all these different things, at the heart of it is a lack of knowledge. If you will, there's an ignorance that we have to put asunder. And if we don't do that through public schools and great opportunities, we're not going to, I think, continue.
Well, I think, I know the teachers can will appreciate knowing that you do support them because the philosophy is attitude is a direct reflection on leadership. So I'm sure that by them knowing that you support what they're doing and what they're trying to do, I'm sure that'll be much better for all of the teachers and for the climate here in the CMS schools. There's a difference between teaching and educating, and that's what I always say. I love the teachers, but there's a difference between teaching and educating. I always say if you give a seal a ball and the seal throw the ball back to the trainer and the trainer give him some fish and he go under the water and eat all the fish, that's a trained seal. But if a seal throw the ball back and he give it back to the trainer and he give it some fish and he go up under the water and feed his family, that's an educated seal. And so we all have to strive. And when I say all, I'm talking about all, the entire community. We have to strive to be more positive, to be more committed, and to be more uplifting for these kids. I am one who will not give up on my community, and I definitely will not give up on the youth because I'm smart enough to understand it's my generation that failed them. So I'm going to take the rest of the time that I have to make sure I give the proper instructions and do the proper things with these youth. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and talking to me today. And I look forward to having you back on my show so we could do some type of recap. Plus, we could just talk in the future, and it's a way for me to see how your sock game looking.
Hey, I'd be honored to do that, and I promise I'll step my sock game up. I couldn't afford the shoe game because I couldn't keep up with the young guys, but the sock game I'm all right in.
First of all, you're the superintendent. So when you say you can't afford the shoe game, we're not believing you, okay? That's the first thing. We are not believing you, all
Okay,
right?
so you're speaking truth now. Okay. Yeah.
Right, we're not believing you. But once again, man, thank you for your time, and shouts out to your assistant back there in the back. Hey, sis.
Hey, how are you?
I'm gonna give you some love, okay?
Thank you. I
Thank you for getting them up here. All right, in one piece. Okay,
I wanted him to have his word out.
well, that's a good
For the
thing.
community to hear.
That's a good thing.
She's a huge fan, man. She is.
She listens to Grown Man
She
Radio.
listens to Grown Man Radio. She's gonna come see you, I think, tonight somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, you
She's
coming to
yeah.
Grown Man Conversations?
Try to come out.
Sis, come on through. Come on through. We're gonna have a great time.
I think I'm gonna come out.
Thank you, man.
All right,
I appreciate you once again.
Thank you.
This has been Dr. Wilcox, Superintendent of CMS, which is Charlotte Mecklenburg School System, and this is Grown Man Radio.